I'm going to tell you why I chose Renegade for Justice. And it started the day of my sentencing. Up until that morning, I was under the impression that I was going to be getting probation and would be overseeing a staff meeting with 65 people that afternoon. Instead, I went to the courthouse, and my attorney told us that the victim's wife had had a change of heart. While she had initially not wanted me to go to prison, she had changed her mind. And at my sentencing, she had an opportunity to speak to the judge. And she told the judge that she wanted me to go to prison so that I could find Jesus. Now, I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, before the Olympics, so I knew who Jesus was. And I had some issues with the people who followed Jesus because they didn't let me into a lot of things when I was a kid, and they didn't let a lot of other people into things as a kid. And so I became friends with all of the other people who weren't allowed in, and we were the cool ones. So when the victim's wife told me that she wanted me to find Jesus, it was complicated. But eventually I realized that I had some work to do. And so I went looking for her Jesus, or for any version of Jesus, really. I looked at all of them, and I went searching. So I'm going to read just a few that I found. No, I'm not going to get preachy. Matthew 25, 36 and 40, or 36 to 40. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And I interpret it that Jesus is calling for radical empathy. And he's calling for solidarity with the oppressed and challenging us to see the humanity and value of every person, including prisoners. Another is John 8, 3 through 11. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to cast the first stone at her. And so he's advocating for mercy over judgment. Or there's Isaiah 61:1 and Luke 4:18. Both of them effectively say, he has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. So Jesus is saying that his mission is to champion liberation, emphasize that his ministry are for those who are trapped in systems of injustice and personal bondage, suffering of either a prison or a mind-forged prison. And then there's Hebrews 13:3. Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. And those are some of the takeaways from the many quests I went on in an effort to find Jesus. And while I did not gain the faith in the way that I think she maybe had hoped, I did gain a deeper understanding of what a sense of justice meant, because I know that I had not been given justice as a victim. I know that the court system left me worse off as a victim than when they found me as a victim. And I wanted to understand that. And so I came across this word renegade in a book I was reading the week after I had been fined. You see, I got in trouble a lot in prison because I'm not a very good inmate. And so I didn't get in trouble on purpose. It was because there's no rules, and I'm good with rules, right? I don't want to digress. Anyway, so I came across the word renegade after I had been fined. And my case manager had told me that I was antisocial. And they were telling me again and again that I was antisocial. And that didn't make sense to me because I had spent my entire adult life working with nonprofits and doing social organizing and community building and being an educator and working on how to reduce socioeconomic barriers. And I had been doing all of this stuff for society and for community. And so to be labeled antisocial went against everything I thought I knew about myself. And it turns out I was just antisocial to the criminal justice system as they want it to be. And so when you look up the word renegade, here's what comes up. A deserter from one faith, cause, or allegiance to another, an individual who rejects lawful or conventional behavior, a person who deserts and betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. A renegade is someone who rejects the status quo, defies convention, or deserts a cause, party, or faith. A renegade can also be described as a rebel, an outlaw, a deserter, a betrayer, a dissident, or a traitor. And as I was reading all of these Bible verses and contemplating the word renegade, I also contemplated the word justice. A concern for justice, peace, and genuine respect for people. The quality of being fair and reasonable. Justice is the idea that people should be treated fairly and equally, and that they should be held accountable for their actions. The constant and perpetual will to render each his due, to make right. All people are equal before the eyes of God and justice. And so as I was thinking about it, I was realizing that the problem of why I was being called antisocial is because I was calling bullshit. In the same way that I called bullshit to the Mormon church when they didn't let me in, or any of my queer friends, or any of my black and brown friends. We were all sitting outside wondering what was going on in those birthday parties that we weren't allowed in at. And I saw when I was a kid the way that the Mormons got the better roles in theater, or the better, sports spots. You can tell I'm not a sports person. But I saw the way that the Mormons had life easier, and the way that I and the other non-Mormons had it harder. And I realized that it's not the kind of Jesus where I need Jesus's approval. It's that in order for me to live like Jesus, I need to be empathetic to everyone's suffering. That whether someone is suffering in their own mind-forged prison because of trauma and pain, or because they're in prison that is cement and metal, that level of suffering is a reflection of us all in our society and in humanity. That is the cost of your comfort. It's the cost of this next presidency, of TikTok going away, of health insurance not being adequate, of people dying because corporate profits make more, they matter more. And children can be unalived at school, and yet when I'm told to have more empathy about a CEO whose life is taken, I mention Robert Brooks. We are all equal, and I have always known that from a very young age. And all of these systems keep telling me I'm wrong. My abuser told me I was wrong when I stood up for myself and said, my opinion matters just as much as yours. He said, no, you're wrong. And when I went to prison and I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. They said, no, you're wrong. It does make sense. You're the one who doesn't make sense. You're wrong. And so throughout my life, these systems of religion and patriarchy and government, I was told to believe in. And so I did everything right. I got married young. I had a child young. I was going to be a productive member of society. I paid all my taxes. And then I became a victim, and I saw what the system was willing to do with someone who would have been allegiant. So damn right, I'm a renegade for justice.